She was the untouchable heiress who swore she'd never love a poor white man, until destiny forced her to eat those words in the most humiliating way possible. Amara Hill had it all: wealth, status, and the arrogance to dismiss a humble repairman as beneath her. But she had no idea that this same man would soon hold her heart and her future in his calloused hands. What started as a flat tire on a rainy night would spiral into a web of forbidden attraction, family pressure, and a choice that would either destroy everything she'd built or prove that real love conquers all. But when a secret video surfaces and powerful enemies try to tear them apart with bribery and manipulation, Amara discovers that the man she once scorned might be the only one brave enough to fight for her. Will she choose love over status, or will her pride cost her the greatest love of her life? If you're watching this incredible love story unfold, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know if you believe in second chances and love that defies all odds. The charity dinner had been a nightmare. Amara Hill smoothed her black silk dress and stepped out of the downtown hotel into the cool Friday night air. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk as she walked toward the parking garage, her mind still spinning from the evening's events. Mark had shown up. Of course he had. Her ex-boyfriend never missed a chance to make a scene, especially when the city's elite were watching. He'd spent the whole night making snide comments about her high standards and how she needed to come down to earth. Amara's jaw clenched just thinking about his smug smile. "Girl, you look like you want to punch someone," Nadia said, catching up with her best friend. Nadia Price had been by Amara's side all evening, looking stunning in her emerald green dress. As Amara's stylist and closest friend, she knew exactly when things were bothering her. "Mark is such a—" Amara stopped herself. "Sorry, I'm just tired of his games." They reached Amara's silver luxury sedan, parked under a streetlight. Something looked wrong. Amara's stomach dropped as she got closer. "Oh no," she whispered. The front tire was completely flat, sitting like a deflated balloon against the rim. Nadia pulled out her phone. "I'll call my cousin Jerome. He can come get us." "No, it's okay. I'll call a tow truck." Amara dialed the emergency roadside number. The dispatcher told her a driver would be there in 20 minutes. She and Nadia leaned against a nearby lamppost to wait, the sounds of the city humming around them. 25 minutes later, a white pickup truck pulled up behind her car. The truck was clean but clearly well used, with a small company logo on the side that read Jensen Towing and Auto. The driver climbed out, and Amara found herself staring. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his navy work shirt. His light brown hair was neat, but a little messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. When he looked her way, she caught sight of serious green eyes and a face that was more rugged than handsome. He had the kind of look that said he worked with his hands and didn't mind getting dirty. "Are you Ms. Hill?" he asked, walking over with a slight limp. His voice was quiet, steady. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Colt Jensen. Let me take a look at this tire for you." He knelt down next to the flat tire, running his hands along the rubber. "Looks like you picked up a nail. Probably happened in the last day or two. The tire's been losing air slowly." Amara watched as he worked. His movements were quick and sure, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. He didn't waste any motion. Everything he did had a purpose. "I can put your spare on," he said, standing up and brushing off his knees. "Should get you home safely. You'll want to get this fixed tomorrow, though." "How much will this cost?" Amara asked, already reaching for her purse. "Just the service call fee, $60. Amara blinked. She'd expected him to charge her at least $200, maybe more given the late hour and her expensive car. "That's it?" Colt shrugged. "It's a simple job, won't take me 15 minutes. He got to work, jacking up the car and removing the flat tire with practiced ease. Amara found herself watching his hands as he worked. They were strong and calloused, with a few small scars that told stories she'd never know. When he lifted the spare tire, his muscles moved under his shirt in a way that made her look away quickly. "So what do you ladies do?" he asked as he tightened the lug nuts. "I work in operations for a company downtown," Amara said, not mentioning that the company was Hill Industries and her father was the CEO. "Nadia's a stylist." "That's cool. I bet you meet interesting people." "Some more interesting than others," Nadia muttered, making Amara smile despite herself. Colt lowered the car and put his tools away. All set. That spare should get you wherever you need to go, but don't drive on it too long, and take it easy on turns. Amara pulled out her wallet and handed him 3 $20 bills. Keep the change. Colt looked at the money and shook his head. 60's fine. I don't need a tip for doing my job. Are you sure? It's really no problem. I'm sure. He handed her back a 20. Have a good night, ladies. He started walking back to his truck, and Amara felt something strange flutter in her chest. She couldn't remember the last time someone had refused her money. Wait, she called out. He turned around. Thank you, really. You saved us tonight. Colt nodded once. Just doing my job, ma'am. As he drove away, Amara watched his taillights disappear into traffic. She was still holding the 20 he'd given back to her. Well, he was nice, Nadia said, getting into the passenger seat. Amara started the car, testing how the spare tire felt. Yeah, he seemed decent. And cute, in a rugged working man kind of way. Nadia, Amara's voice held a warning. What? I'm just saying. You could do worse than a guy who shows up when you need him. Amara turned onto the main road, her mind flashing back to Colt's steady green eyes and the way he'd worked without complaint. Then she thought about the charity dinner, about Mark's comments, about the way people looked at her when they found out who her father was. Nadia, you know I could never be with someone like that. Someone like what? You know what I mean. I'd never love a poor white man. The words came out harder than she meant them to, sharp and final. What Amara didn't know was that Colt was still close enough to hear her through the open window. He'd pulled over to check something on his truck when her voice carried across the parking lot. The words hit him like a physical blow. He sat in his truck for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. Then he started the engine and drove home, her words echoing in his head. Rain began to fall as Amara drove toward her downtown condo. She turned on the windshield wipers and tried to focus on the road ahead, but she couldn't shake the image of Colt's hands as he'd worked or the quiet dignity in his voice when he'd refused her tip. Something about her own words felt wrong in her mouth, like they didn't quite fit anymore. Drip, drip, drip. Amara woke up Saturday morning to the sound of water hitting her kitchen floor. She sat up in bed, listening. There it was again. Oh, come on, she groaned, throwing back her covers. She padded to the kitchen in her pajamas and bare feet. Sure enough, there was a growing brown stain on her white ceiling, right above her marble kitchen island. Water was steadily dripping onto the floor, each drop making a soft, plinking sound. Amara grabbed her phone and called the building management office. It was only 7:15 in the morning, but Hill Tower had 24-hour maintenance service, one of the perks of living in her father's building. This is Deshaun Carter, a familiar voice answered. Deshaun had been the building manager for 3 years. He was a good man who took pride in keeping the building running smoothly. Hi, Deshaun. It's Amara in 14B. I have water leaking through my ceiling in the kitchen. Oh, man, I'm sorry about that. Let me guess. Right above your island? Yes, exactly. How did you know? We've been having some issues with the plumbing stack on your side of the building. Nothing major, but some of the older fittings are starting to give us trouble. I'll send someone up right away. Thank you. I'll be here. Amara hung up and grabbed a large pot from her cabinet, placing it under the leak. The steady rhythm of water hitting metal was somehow even more annoying than the dripping on the floor. She made coffee and sat at her dining table, watching the water drip and thinking about the night before. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the encounter with Colt Jensen. Something about the way he'd carried himself, the quiet confidence and lack of pretense, had stayed with her. And then she'd said those awful words about never loving a poor white man. Even thinking about it now made her cringe. Why had she said that? It wasn't even really how she felt. Was it? 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Amara looked through the peephole and felt her stomach flip. It was Colt Jensen. She opened the door, suddenly very aware that she was still in her pajamas, soft cotton shorts and a tank top that probably showed more than she'd intended. Ms. Hill, he said with a polite nod. His voice was completely professional, but something in his eyes seemed different from the night before. Cooler. Mr. Jensen, I didn't know you worked for the building, too. I do maintenance and repair work for several buildings downtown. Deshawn called me about your leak. He held up a toolbox. May I come in? Of course. She stepped aside to let him pass, catching a whiff of soap and something that smelled like pine. The kitchen's this way. Colt followed her to the kitchen, his work boots quiet on her hardwood floors. He looked at the leak, then up at the ceiling, then around at her kitchen setup. Nice place, he said simply. Thank you. Amara felt awkward standing there in her pajamas while he worked. Can I get you some coffee? That's okay. I should get to work. He was definitely cooler toward her than he'd been the night before, more distant, professional to the point of being almost cold. Colt pulled a small ladder from his toolkit and set it up under the leak. He climbed up and pressed his hands against different parts of the ceiling, listening and feeling for the source of the problem. The good news is it's not a major pipe break, he said, climbing down. But the bad news is there's a failing valve in the stack. It's going to need parts and probably a 2-day equipment swap to fix properly. 2 days? Maybe 3, depending on when I can get the parts. I'll need to shut off water to this whole section of the building for at least 12 hours while I work. Amara watched him pack up his tools. His movements were efficient, almost brisk, like he wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. Mr. Jensen. He paused, not quite looking at her. Yes, ma'am. About last night. I wanted to apologize. What I said to my friend, it was rude. You didn't deserve to hear that. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Then, the professional mask slipped back into place. No need to apologize, ma'am. You have every right to your opinions. But I'll call Deshawn with an update about the repair timeline. Have a good day, Ms. Hill. And then he was gone, leaving Amara standing in her kitchen with the sound of dripping water and the weight of words she wished she could take back. She grabbed her phone and texted Nadia. I was rude. Last night. He didn't deserve it. Nadia's response came back immediately. Who? The tow truck guy? What happened? He's fixing my ceiling now. Long story, but I said something awful and he heard it. Girl, what did you do? Amara stared at her phone, not sure how to explain the mess she'd made. How do you tell your best friend that you'd insulted a man who'd done nothing but help you, and now you couldn't stop thinking about the hurt you'd seen in his eyes? By Saturday afternoon, Amara had paced her condo about 100 times. The leak had slowed to an occasional drip, but she couldn't stop thinking about the look on Colt's face when she'd tried to apologize. She'd changed into jeans and a simple blue sweater, hoping she looked more approachable than she had in her pajamas. Not that it mattered. Colt Jensen clearly wanted nothing to do with her. At 12:40, there was another knock at her door. Amara looked through the peephole and saw Colt again, this time carrying a larger toolbox and what looked like some copper pipes. Mr. Jensen, she said, opening the door, I've got the parts I need. I'm going to check your air vent first, make sure the moisture hasn't spread. His tone was still strictly business. She watched as he knelt down next to the air vent in her hallway. He unscrewed the cover and peered inside with a small flashlight. Then he paused. Huh, he said quietly. What is it? Colt reached into the vent and pulled out something small and silver. When he turned toward her, Amara's heart nearly stopped. It was her father's vintage Rolex, the one he'd been looking for since last night. Is this yours? Colt asked, holding the watch carefully. Oh my God, yes, it's my father's. He's been looking everywhere for this. She took the watch from him, her fingers brushing his briefly. Where was it? Caught on the inside of the vent cover, must have fallen through the grate somehow. Amara stared at the watch. Her father had been panicked about losing it. The watch had belonged to his own father, and it was one of the few things Victor Hill truly treasured. She'd been planning to call the hotel to see if it had been turned in to Lost and Found. I can't believe you found this. My father was heartbroken about losing it. Just luck. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been checking for moisture damage. Amara looked up at him. Please let me pay you a reward. This watch means everything to him. Colt shook his head. I didn't do anything special. Just found something that was already there. But really, it's fine. He started screwing the vent cover back in place. I'm just glad it made it back to where it belongs. His phone buzzed and he pulled it out of his pocket. Hey, Ellie, he answered. His voice immediately warmed, becoming softer and more gentle. Amara tried not to listen, but she couldn't help overhearing his side of the conversation. Yeah, I can pick you up from work at 4. No, Don't walk home by yourself. I'll come get you. Did you eat lunch? You've got to eat, Ellie. Your body needs fuel, especially when you're working these long shifts. Okay? I'll grab us some Chinese food on the way home. The good stuff, not the cheap place. Amara felt something shift inside her chest as she listened. The way he talked to whoever Ellie was, it was so careful and protective, like he really cared about making sure she was okay. Love you too. See you at 4. He hung up and went back to his work, seeming to forget Amara was there. Your girlfriend? Amara asked, then immediately felt stupid for asking. My sister. She's 22 and thinks she doesn't need anyone looking out for her. There was affection in his voice, but also something that sounded like worry. That's sweet of you to take care of her. Colt glanced at her, and for just a moment the professional mask slipped. Someone has to. There was something in those 3 words that made Amara's heart squeeze, a story she didn't know but could sense in the way he'd said them. I should get back to work on your pipe issue, he said, standing up and gathering his tools. Of course. Thank you again for finding this. She held up the watch. He nodded and headed toward the service elevator at the end of the hall. Amara watched him go, holding her father's watch close to her chest. Who was Colt Jensen, really? She'd made assumptions about him based on his job and his truck, but listening to him talk to his sister had shown her something different. Someone who took responsibility seriously, someone who put other people's needs before his own, someone who deserved a lot better than her thoughtless words the night before. As the elevator doors closed, Amara found herself wondering what else she'd gotten wrong about him. Saturday afternoon found Amara sitting in the building management office with Deshawn Carter and Colt Jensen. The office was small but organized, with charts showing maintenance schedules and a coffee maker that had seen better days. So here's the problem, Deshawn said, leaning back in his chair. We've got that client tour on Monday morning, important people from Hill Industries coming to look at the model unit. Amara nodded. She'd helped set up the tour herself. 3 potential corporate clients wanted to see what Hill Tower had to offer for executive housing. The thing is, Deshawn continued, the work Colt needs to do on your water line connects to the same system that feeds the model unit. If we're not careful, we could have pressure issues right in the middle of the tour. Colt spoke up from where he'd been studying a building diagram. I can work around it, set up a temporary bypass system and schedule the noisy work for after hours. How long would that take? Amara asked. 2 extra days, but it would keep your tour running smooth. Colt looked directly at her for the first time since he'd arrived. I'd need to do a walkthrough of the model unit first. Make sure I understand how everything connects. Deshawn smiled. Perfect. Amara, you know that unit better than anyone. Could you show Colt around? Amara felt her cheeks warm. Of course. 20 minutes later, she was standing in the elevator with Colt, heading down to the 2nd floor. The silence stretched between them like a thick rope. I really am sorry, she said quietly, about what I said last night. Colt watched the floor numbers change. You don't owe me an apology. You don't know me. That's the problem. I made a judgment without knowing anything about you. The elevator stopped and the doors opened. Colt gestured for her to go first. The model unit was one of Amara's favorite spaces in the building. It was designed to show off the best features of Hill Tower. High ceilings, large windows, and an open floor plan that made everything feel spacious and bright. This is beautiful, Colt said, looking around the living room. Someone put a lot of thought into this. Thank you. I helped design the layout. He looked at her with what might have been surprise. Really? I studied interior design before I went into business. It's always been a hobby of mine. She walked over to the kitchen island. The water pressure issues you mentioned, they'd show up here first, right? Colt nodded, joining her in the kitchen. This is the furthest point from the main line. If there's going to be a problem, it'll happen here. He opened the cabinet under the sink and crouched down to look at the pipes. I can run a temporary line from the unit next door. It'll keep everything running smooth for your tour. That sounds complicated. Not really, just takes time and planning. He stood up and brushed off his knees. I like solving puzzles like this. They walked through the rest of the unit together. Amara showed him the bathroom, the bedroom, and the small balcony that overlooked the city. Colt asked smart questions about the layout and took notes on his phone. You really know what you're doing, Amara said as they headed back to the elevator. I've been doing this for 8 years. You pick things up. As they waited for the elevator, Amara noticed a display of paint swatches on a nearby table. She reached for a soft blue sample at the same time Colt went for a warm gray one. Their hands bumped, and both colors went flying. "Sorry," they said at exactly the same time, then looked at each other and started laughing. It was the first real moment of ease they'd shared, and Amara felt something light flutter in her chest. "I like the blue," Colt said, picking up her sample, "and I like the gray. We have completely different taste." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," he said quietly. The elevator arrived, and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, Amara caught herself sneaking glances at Colt's profile. When he'd laughed, his whole face had changed. The serious lines around his eyes had disappeared, and she'd seen a glimpse of who he might be when he wasn't being so careful. Saturday evening, Amara was touching up her lipstick when Nadia arrived at her condo, looking stunning in a black dress and heels. "So where are we eating tonight?" Nadia asked, flopping down on Amara's couch. "That new Italian place downtown? I made reservations for 8. "Good, I'm starving, and I want to hear all about this ceiling repair drama. You've been weird about it all afternoon." Amara grabbed her purse. "It's nothing dramatic. The guy who fixed my tire last night is also doing the plumbing work. And nothing. He seems nice. Professional." Nadia raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. Yet. They took the elevator down to the lobby, chatting about Nadia's latest client, a local news anchor who wanted a complete wardrobe makeover. As the elevator doors opened, Amara's good mood evaporated. Mark Lang was standing near the front desk, looking perfectly put together in an expensive suit, and that smile she'd once thought was charming. Now it just looked calculated. "Amara, what a nice surprise." He walked over, his eyes taking in her dress and heels with obvious appreciation. "Hello, Mark." She kept her voice level and polite. "You look beautiful tonight. Going somewhere special?" "Just dinner with Nadia." Mark's smile got wider. "You know, I was just thinking about our conversation last night, about standards and expectations." Amara felt Nadia tense beside her. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Oh, come on. We both know you're particular about the kind of man you'd consider. Someone who can stand beside you, someone who fits in your world." His tone was light, but there was something sharp underneath. "I suppose that's true," Amara said carefully. She could see people in the lobby listening to their conversation. "I mean, you wouldn't want to date someone from the garage, would you? Someone who works with their hands?" Mark's laugh sounded mean. "That wouldn't exactly fit your image." Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She knew Mark was baiting her, trying to make her look snobby in front of other people. The smart thing would be to walk away. But instead, she heard herself saying, "You're right. I don't date men who can't stand beside me." The words came out harder and more final than she'd intended. What she didn't see was Colt Jensen stepping out of the service elevator at the back of the lobby, carrying a toolbox and a folder of building plans. He'd come to drop off paperwork for Deshawn about Monday's work schedule. He heard every word. For a moment, Colt just stood there, holding his toolbox and feeling like someone had punched him in the stomach. Twice in 2 days, she'd made it clear exactly what she thought of men like him. He stepped back into the service corridor, his face carefully blank. He'd leave the paperwork with Deshawn tomorrow. Right now, he just needed to get out of there. In the lobby, Amara was already regretting her words. Mark's smile had turned smug and satisfied, like he'd won some kind of game she hadn't known they were playing. "Well," he said, "I'm glad we understand each other. Have a nice dinner, ladies." As soon as he was gone, Nadia grabbed Amara's arm. "What was that about?" "I don't know. He's been weird since the charity dinner last night." "No, I mean, why did you say that thing about not dating men who work with their hands? That didn't sound like you." Amara sighed. "Because I'm an idiot, and because Mark knows exactly how to push my buttons." They walked out of the building toward Nadia's car, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made another terrible mistake. Saturday night at 10:45, Amara was curled up on her couch in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, trying to focus on a book. Dinner with Nadia had been good, but she couldn't stop thinking about her encounter with Mark in the lobby. There was a soft knock at her door. When she looked through the peephole, she saw Colt and Deshawn standing in the hallway with toolboxes and what looked like pipe fittings. She opened the door, suddenly aware that she looked like she was ready for bed. "Hi. Sorry to bother you so late," Deshawn said. "We need to get started on the prep work for Monday's repair. It's going to be quiet stuff, but I wanted to let you know we'd be in and out." "Of course. Do whatever you need to do." Colt nodded politely but didn't meet her eyes. His whole demeanor seemed even more distant than it had been that afternoon. "Can I get you guys some coffee?" Amara offered. "I was about to make a pot anyway." "That would be great," Deshawn said. "It's going to be a long night." While they set up their tools in the hallway, Amara went to her kitchen and started the coffee maker. She found some cookies in her pantry and arranged them on a plate, then stood there for a moment trying to figure out what was bothering her about Colt's behavior. When she came back out with a tray, Colt was kneeling next to her air vent again, this time with a small camera on a flexible wire. "What's that for?" she asked, setting the tray on her dining table. "I want to see exactly where the problem is before I start cutting into walls," he said without looking up. "This way I can fix it right the first time." Deshawn came over for coffee and cookies. "Colt's the most careful worker I've ever seen. He'd rather spend an extra hour planning than have to redo something later." "That's smart," Amara said. "Tell that to the contractors who want everything done yesterday." Deshawn took a sip of coffee. "But Colt doesn't cut corners, even when it would be easier." Amara glanced at Colt, who was still focused on his camera work. "That's a good quality to have." "Yeah, well, his sister's lucky to have him. Kid's been taking care of her since she was in high school." "Deshawn," Colt said quietly, and something in his voice made the other man stop talking. "Sorry, man. Just saying you're a good brother." Colt pulled the camera out of the vent and started packing it away. "I can see the problem. It's a simple fix, but I'll need to turn off the water to this section for about 6 hours tomorrow night." "6 hours?" Amara asked. "From about 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. That way it won't affect anyone's morning routine." "That works for me." For the next hour, Amara watched them work. They moved around each other easily, like they'd done this kind of job together many times before. Deshawn did most of the talking, but when Colt spoke up, it was always with something useful or important. "You know," Amara said during a quiet moment, "I never thanked you properly for finding my father's watch." Colt looked up from the pipe fitting he was examining. "No need to thank me." "Actually, there is. That watch belonged to my grandfather. It's one of the few things my dad has left of him." Something shifted in Colt's expression. "I'm glad it made it back to him then. My dad's a good man, but he's not always great at showing his feelings. When he lost that watch, I saw him cry for the first time since my mother died." Colt was quiet for a long moment. "Family stuff is complicated," he said finally. "It is. My father has very high expectations. For himself, for the business, for me. Sometimes it feels like I'm always trying to prove I'm worthy of the family name." "That sounds exhausting," Colt said quietly. "It can be, but I love him, and I understand why he pushes so hard. He built everything we have from nothing." At 1:10 in the morning, they finished the prep work. Deshawn stretched and yawned. "All right, that's enough for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow evening for the real work." As they packed up their tools, Amara found herself not wanting them to leave. The quiet work and soft conversation had been oddly comforting. "Thank you both," she said as they headed toward the door, "for being so careful with everything." "No problem," Deshawn said. "See you tomorrow night." Colt paused at the doorway. "Ms. Hill." "Yes?" "The coffee was really good. Thank you." It was such a small thing, but the way he said it, genuine and warm, made Amara's chest feel light. "You're welcome," she said. After they left, Amara cleaned up the coffee cups and got ready for bed. But as she brushed her teeth, she kept thinking about the way Colt had said family stuff was complicated. There was a story there, something that explained the careful way he talked about his sister and the quiet sadness she sometimes caught in his eyes. She wanted to know that story, and that realization scared her more than she cared to admit. Sunday morning found Amara at Café Luna, a little neighborhood place 3 blocks from Hill Tower. She wasn't usually an early riser on weekends, but she'd woken up with an idea and couldn't get back to sleep. She'd called the cafe ahead of time and ordered a dozen assorted pastries, plus 3 large coffees. When Deshawn had mentioned it would be a long night of work, she'd started thinking about how she could show her appreciation for their extra effort. 1 dozen mixed pastries and 3 large house blends, the barista said, sliding the boxes and coffee carrier across the counter. Thank you. Amara was balancing everything carefully when she heard a familiar voice behind her. 2 regular coffees and whatever pastries you've got left from yesterday, as long as they're not moldy. She turned around and saw Colt Jensen standing at the counter, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt that made his green eyes look deeper. He looked different out of his work clothes, younger, more relaxed. Ms. Hill, he said, noticing her. Good morning. Good morning, and please call me Amara. Amara, he said her name carefully, like he was testing how it sounded. That's a pretty name. Thank you. Are you picking up breakfast for you and your sister? Colt nodded. Ellie's got a study group this morning, but she won't eat unless I put food directly in front of her. The barista handed him a bag and 2 coffee cups. Here you go, Colt. Tell Ellie I said good luck on her finals. Will do, thanks, Maria. You're a regular here? Amara asked as they walked toward the door together. Every Sunday for the past 2 years. Maria makes the best coffee in the neighborhood, and she always saves the good pastries for us. Outside the cafe, they paused on the sidewalk. The morning air was crisp, and the sun was just starting to warm the concrete. So what's all that for? Colt asked, nodding at her boxes of pastries. You and Deshawn. I wanted to say thank you for being so accommodating about the timing of everything. Colt looked surprised. You didn't need to do that. I wanted to. Besides, I know how hard you're working to make sure Monday's tour goes smoothly. That's just part of the job. Maybe, but not everyone would put in the extra effort. They stood there for a moment, neither one seeming to want to end the conversation. Finally, Colt gestured toward a small standing table outside the cafe. Do you have a few minutes? I should probably eat something before I head home. Sure. They sat down across from each other, and Amara opened one of the pastry boxes. Take whatever you want. I definitely overordered. Colt selected a simple blueberry muffin. So you said you studied interior design? I did. Got my degree and everything. But my father needed help with the business side of things, so I went back to school for my MBA. Do you miss it? The design work? Sometimes. I still get to use it a little bit with the model units and office spaces, but it's not the same as having my own clients. Why don't you do both? Amara laughed. Because there aren't enough hours in the day, and because my father needs me focused on Hill Industries. That sounds like a lot of pressure. It can be, but I understand why he feels that way. He built this company from nothing. When he was my age, he was working 2 jobs and saving every penny to start his first construction project. Colt took a sip of his coffee. What about your mother? Was she involved in the business? She died when I was 16. Cancer. The words still felt heavy, even after all these years. I'm sorry. She was amazing, strong and funny, and completely unimpressed by my father's success. She kept him grounded. Amara touched the simple gold bracelet she wore on her left wrist. This was hers. It's not expensive, but she wore it every day. She sounds like she was a wonderful woman. She was. I think that's part of why my father's so protective now. He doesn't want to lose anyone else. Colt was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. I understand that feeling. Is that why you take care of your sister? Something like that. He met her eyes. I like fixing things, making sure they work the way they're supposed to. That way they don't break down later and hurt people. There was something in the way he said it that made Amara think he wasn't just talking about plumbing and electrical work. That's a good way to think about it, she said softly. Colt's phone buzzed and he checked it quickly. I should get home. Ellie's probably wondering where her coffee is. Of course. Thanks for sharing breakfast with me. Thanks for the company, and for the pastries. He stood up, then paused. Amara? Yes? If you need to coordinate anything for tomorrow night's work, you can call me directly. He pulled out his phone. What's your number? They exchanged numbers, and Amara found herself smiling as she saved his contact information. I'll see you tonight, Colt said. See you tonight. As she watched him walk away, Amara realized that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with work. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but Amara was up early and dressed in her best navy suit. The client tour was scheduled for 8:30, and she wanted everything to be perfect. The night before had gone smoothly. Colt and Deshawn had worked quietly and efficiently, replacing the problematic valve and testing all the connections. They'd finished at 3:45 a.m., and the water had been back on by 4. At 6:50, Amara was in the model unit, doing one final check of everything. The flowers were fresh, the surfaces were spotless, and she'd even added some subtle background music to create the right atmosphere. She turned on the kitchen faucet to test the water pressure. It ran strong and clear. Perfect. "Morning, Amara." She turned to see Colt standing in the doorway, looking professional in his navy work shirt and clean jeans. He was carrying a small toolbox. "Good morning. Is everything okay?" "Just wanted to do one final pressure check before your clients get here. Make sure everything's running exactly. Right?" "That's very thorough of you." He moved to the kitchen sink and turned on both hot and cold water, watching the flow carefully. After a moment, he frowned. "There's a little fluctuation," he said, adjusting something under the sink. "Not enough to cause problems, but I can smooth it out." For the next few minutes, Amara watched him work. His movements were precise and confident, and she found herself thinking about their conversation at the cafe the day before. "There," he said, standing up. "Try it now." Amara turned on the faucet. The water flow was perfect, strong and steady, with no variation at all. "That's amazing. I never would have noticed the difference, but this is definitely better." The clients might not notice either, but if they did, it would raise questions about the building's infrastructure. "You really think about everything, don't you?" Colt packed up his tools. "It's easier to prevent problems than to fix them after they happen." At 8:25, the clients arrived. 3 executives from different companies, all considering Hill Tower for executive housing packages. Amara greeted them in the lobby with her father, who looked distinguished in his charcoal suit. "Gentlemen, welcome to Hill Tower," Victor Hill said, shaking hands with each of them. "I think you'll find our amenities and location ideal for your needs." The tour went perfectly. The clients were impressed with the building's features, the location, and especially the model unit. When one of them tested the kitchen faucet, exactly as Colt had predicted, the water pressure was flawless. "Excellent infrastructure," the client noted. "You can tell a lot about a building from the water pressure." After the clients left, Victor pulled Amara aside in the lobby. "Nice work on the coordination," he said. "I was worried about the timing with the plumbing repairs, but everything went smoothly." "Thank you. Mr. Jensen and Deshawn were very professional about the whole thing." "Jensen? The repair guy?" "Colt Jensen. He's the one who found your watch, actually. And he did the waterline repair." Victor looked thoughtful. "I should thank him properly for the watch. That was above and beyond. He's a good worker, very thorough." Victor studied his daughter's face. "You seem to have spent quite a bit of time with this repairman." "Just coordinating the work schedule. I wanted to make sure nothing went wrong with the tour." "Of course." As they walked toward the elevators, Amara caught sight of Colt coming out of the building management office. He was talking to Deshawn, but when he saw her, he nodded politely. "That's him," she said quietly to her father. Victor looked over at Colt, taking in his work clothes and tool bag. "I see." Just then, Mark Lang appeared as if from nowhere, sliding up beside them with his usual confident smile. "Victor, Amara, how did the tour go this morning?" "Very well," Victor said politely. The clients were impressed." "I'm sure they were. Hill Tower is an impressive building." Mark's eyes followed Amara's gaze to where Colt was standing. "I see you've got the maintenance staff working hard today." There was something in Mark's tone that made Amara's jaw tighten. "The building staff is very professional." "Oh, I'm sure they are. Some of them seem to go above and beyond from what I hear." Victor looked between Mark and Amara, sensing tension, but not understanding where it was coming from. "Well," Mark said, "I should let you two get back to business. Amara, we should have lunch soon, catch up properly." "Maybe," Amara said noncommittally. As Mark walked away, Amara felt the calm satisfaction from the successful tour beginning to fade. There was something about the way Mark looked at Colt, like he was seeing an opportunity rather than a person. And for the first time, Amara found herself worried about what that might mean. Tuesday morning brought sunshine and the kind of crisp air that made everything feel possible. Amara arrived at Hill Tower early, her coffee in hand, and yesterday's successful client tour still putting a spring in her step. The three companies had all expressed serious interest in executive housing packages. Two of them wanted to schedule follow-up meetings, and the third was ready to move forward with a contract. It was exactly the kind of success her father had been hoping for. At 9 o'clock, she was reviewing rental agreements when her phone buzzed with a text message from Colt. "Quick follow-up needed on yesterday's work. Is 9:30 good for you?" She texted back. "Perfect. Model unit or my place?" "Model unit. Just want to make sure everything's still running smooth." When Amara arrived at the model unit, she found Colt and Deshawn already there, checking the kitchen faucet and bathroom fixtures. "Everything looks perfect," Deshawn was saying. "No pressure drops, no leaks, no weird noises." "Good morning," Amara said, setting her purse on the counter. "Morning," Colt said, looking up from the kitchen sink. "Just wanted to make sure yesterday's fix is holding up." "How does it look?" "Perfect. Better than perfect, actually. The new valve I installed is more efficient than what was there before." "That's wonderful news." Deshawn packed up his tools. "I'm going to check on the units above this one, make sure we didn't cause any problems upstream. Colt, you good here?" "Yeah, I'll be done in a few minutes." After Deshawn left, the model unit felt quieter and somehow more intimate. Amara watched Colt make notes on his phone about water pressure readings. "You really are thorough," she said. "I keep records of everything. That way, if something goes wrong later, I can figure out what changed." "That's smart. Most people would just wing it." Colt put his phone away and looked at her directly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Yesterday, when you were talking to your father about the tour, you seemed really proud of how it went." "I was. It was a big deal for the company." "Do you get to be proud of your work very often?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you get to do things that make you feel good about what you've accomplished? Or is it mostly just trying to meet other people's expectations?" Amara was quiet for a moment. It was such a simple question, but she couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked her about her own feelings about her work. "Honestly, mostly the second thing. I spend so much time trying to prove I belong in my father's world that I don't think about whether I actually like what I'm doing." "That sounds lonely." "It can be." She looked around the model unit. "But yesterday felt different. I got to use my design skills and my business skills, and everything came together perfectly. You should do more of that." "More of what?" "Things that make you proud of yourself, not just proud of meeting someone else's standards." There was something about the way he said it, gentle but certain, that made Amara's chest feel warm. "What about you?" she asked. "Do you get to be proud of your work?" "Every day. When I fix something that was broken, when I prevent a problem from happening, when I help someone like you get through an important day without any disasters." He smiled. "It's not glamorous, but it's mine." "That sounds like a good way to live." "It works for me." They stood there for a moment, looking at each other across the kitchen island. Amara felt something shifting between them, a deeper understanding maybe, or the beginning of real trust. "I should get back to work," Colt said finally. "Me too." But neither of them moved toward the door. "Amara." "Yes?" "If you ever want to talk about work stuff or anything really, you have my number." "Thank you. That means a lot." After he left, Amara stayed in the model unit for a few more minutes, thinking about their conversation. When was the last time someone had asked her what made her proud? When was the last time someone had encouraged her to think about what she wanted, not just what was expected of her? Wednesday afternoon found Amara with a rare hour of free time between meetings. She'd been thinking about Colt's suggestion to do more things that made her proud, and she'd had an idea. She drove to the garage where Colt did his towing work, a small but clean auto shop in a neighborhood she'd never spent much time in. The sign out front read, "Martinez Auto Repair," in faded blue letters. Inside, the garage smelled like motor oil and coffee. She could hear the sounds of tools and machinery from the work bays. "Can I help you?" A man in coveralls emerged from behind a car, wiping his hands on a rag. He was probably in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes. "I'm looking for Colt Jensen. I'm Amara Hill." "Ah, you're the lady with the flat tire from Friday night. I'm Luis Martinez. This is my shop." He smiled warmly. Colt's out on a tow call, but he should be back in about 20 minutes. You want some coffee while you wait? That would be wonderful, thank you. Luis led her to a small office area with a couple of mismatched chairs and a coffee maker that looked older than she was. The coffee was surprisingly good, strong and hot with just a hint of cinnamon. So you know Colt from the building work? Luis asked, settling into his chair. Yes, he's been doing some repairs in my building. He's very professional. That he is. Best worker I've ever had. Honest, reliable, skilled at everything he touches. How long has he worked for you? About 3 years now, but I've known him longer than that. Luis took a sip of his coffee. He used to work for the city, had a good job with the utilities department. What happened? His mother had a stroke. Real bad one. Ellie was still in high school, and someone needed to take care of both of them. The city job had good benefits, but the hours were rigid. Colt needed something with more flexibility. Amara felt her chest tighten. So he left his job to take care of his family? Not just that. He had a union apprenticeship lined up too. Would have led to a supervisory position, good money, full benefits, but he turned it down. He gave up a promotion to take care of his mother and sister. Didn't even hesitate, just said family comes first, and that was that. Luis shook his head admiringly. His mother passed about a year ago, but by then Ellie was in college and needed the support. So he stayed flexible, kept doing the towing and repair work. Amara stared into her coffee, processing this information. She'd made assumptions about Colt based on his job and his truck, never thinking about the choices and sacrifices that had led him there. He's a good man, Luis continued. The kind you don't meet very often, puts other people before himself, but never complains about it. It sounds like he is. You know what I admire most about him? He could be bitter about how things turned out. Instead, he just keeps working hard and taking care of people. That takes real character. 20 minutes later, Colt's tow truck pulled into the garage bay. Amara watched through the office window as he climbed out, looking tired but satisfied. I should go, she said, standing up. You don't want to say hello? Actually, I think I need to process what you've told me first. Luis nodded understandingly. He's worth getting to know, that one, just in case you were wondering. As Amara drove back to Hill Tower, her mind was spinning. All this time she'd been thinking about Colt as someone who couldn't stand beside her in her world, but Luis had shown her a different picture, a man who'd made difficult choices based on love and responsibility, who'd sacrificed his own advancement to take care of the people he loved. She pulled over and sent Nadia a text. I misjudged him. Badly. Nadia's response came back immediately. The repair guy? What did you find out? Too much to text, but I owe him a real apology. Girl, what did you do? Amara stared at her phone, then typed, I judged him by his job instead of his character, and I said some things he didn't deserve to hear. So fix it. How? Stop overthinking and start being honest. If he's as good as you think he is, he'll listen. Wednesday evening brought another client tour, this one for a smaller but equally important group. 2 law firms were considering Hill Tower for their associate housing programs. Amara had spent the afternoon making sure everything in the model unit was perfect. Fresh flowers, soft music, and every surface gleaming. She had also double-checked all the plumbing fixtures, remembering Colt's attention to detail. The tour went even better than Monday's had. The lawyers were impressed with the building's security, the location near the courthouse, and the quality of the finishes. When they tested the kitchen faucet, the water pressure was flawless. Excellent infrastructure, one of them noted, echoing Monday's client almost exactly. You can tell a building is well maintained by the details. After the clients left, Victor Hill found Amara in the lobby, his face beaming with satisfaction. Another success, he said, putting his arm around her shoulders. I'm proud of you, Amara. You're handling these tours beautifully. Thank you, Dad. It feels good to see everything come together. You know, I think we should celebrate. The whole Hill team. These past few days have been exactly what we needed to show the market that Hill Tower is the premier choice for executive housing. That sounds wonderful. Victor looked around the lobby thoughtfully. I want to include the building staff too, Deshaun and his maintenance team. They've been crucial to making these tours run smoothly. Amara felt a flutter of nerves. All of the maintenance team? Especially that Jensen fellow. Deshaun tells me he's been going above and beyond to make sure there are no infrastructure issues during the tours. He has been very thorough. Good. Let's do something simple. Coffee and pastries in the lobby cafe tomorrow afternoon. Nothing fancy, just a chance to say thank you. The next afternoon, the lobby cafe was buzzing with quiet conversation and the smell of fresh coffee. Victor had arranged for a selection of sandwiches and desserts from a local caterer, and the mood was relaxed and celebratory. Amara arrived a few minutes early, wearing a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. She'd chosen it carefully, wanting to look professional but approachable. Deshaun was there with 2 other building maintenance workers, and they all looked pleased but slightly overwhelmed by the attention. And then Colt walked in. He'd clearly made an effort. Instead of his usual work clothes, he was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that made his green eyes look deeper. His hair was neatly combed, and he moved with the same quiet confidence she'd come to recognize. "Gentlemen," Victor said, standing up as the maintenance team approached their table. "Thank you for joining us. I wanted to personally thank you for the exceptional work you've done this week." "Just doing our jobs, Mr. Hill," Deshaun said modestly. "No, you've done much more than that. The attention to detail, the flexibility with scheduling, the preventive work to avoid any issues during the client tours. That's what sets Hill Tower apart from other buildings." Victor's gaze settled on Colt. "And Mr. Jensen, I understand you're the one who found my father's watch. That meant more to me than you know." "I'm glad it made it back to you, sir," Colt said quietly. "Deshaun also tells me you've been instrumental in ensuring our infrastructure runs perfectly during these tours. That kind of foresight and professionalism is exactly what we value in our Hill team." Amara watched Colt's face as her father spoke. He looked genuinely surprised by the recognition, like he wasn't used to being praised for work he considered routine. "Thank you, Mr. Hill. That means a lot coming from you." For the next hour, the group sat around 2 pushed-together tables, sharing coffee and conversation. Amara found herself relaxing as she watched the interactions. Her father was genuinely interested in hearing about the building's systems and challenges. The maintenance workers were clearly pleased to have their expertise recognized, and Colt fit in perfectly. He answered Victor's technical questions clearly and thoughtfully. He laughed at Deshaun's stories about difficult tenants. He even shared a few funny stories about unusual repair calls he'd handled. "So what's next for you?" Victor asked Colt during a lull in the conversation. "Are you planning to stay in building maintenance long-term?" "I enjoy the work," Colt said diplomatically. "I like solving problems and helping people. As long as I can keep doing that, I'm happy." "That's a good attitude. But don't sell yourself short. You clearly have skills that could take you in other directions if you wanted." "I appreciate that, sir. Right now I'm focused on supporting my sister through college. After that, we'll see." Victor nodded approvingly. "Family first. I respect that." As the gathering wound down, people began saying their goodbyes and heading back to work. Amara found herself walking with Colt toward the building exit. "That was nice of your father," Colt said as they reached the revolving door. "He meant every word. You really have made a difference this week." "So have you. Those tours wouldn't have gone nearly as well without your preparation and attention to detail." They stepped outside into the late afternoon sunshine. The street was busy with rush-hour traffic, but somehow the chaos felt distant and manageable. "Colt, yeah? I'm proud of what we share and accomplished this week. Working together, I mean." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Me too." They stood there for a moment, smiling at each other in the golden afternoon light. For the first time since she'd met him, Amara felt like they were truly seeing each other clearly. "I should get going," Colt said eventually. "But this was really nice." It was. As he walked away, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Pure happiness. Not the satisfaction of meeting someone else's expectations, but genuine joy in a shared accomplishment with someone she was beginning to care about. What she didn't notice was Mark Lang watching from across the street, his expression thoughtful and calculating. Tuesday evening found Amara restless and unable to concentrate on work. She'd been thinking about her conversation with Luis at the garage, about Colt's sacrifices for his family, about the easy way he'd fit into her father's impromptu celebration. She'd also been thinking about the way he'd smiled when she said she was proud of their work together. That smile had stayed with her for hours. At 7:30, she impulsively grabbed her jacket and took the elevator down to the lobby. She wasn't sure what she was hoping to find, but she needed air and movement and maybe the chance to clear her head. As she pushed through the revolving door, she almost walked straight into Colt Jensen. "Oh, I'm sorry. Colt? Hey, Amara." He was carrying a small toolbox and looked like he'd just finished work. "I was just dropping off some paperwork for Deshawn." "Are you heading home?" "Yeah, but I was thinking of walking for a bit first. It's been a long day." "Would you like some company? I was just going for a walk myself." Colt looked surprised but pleased. "That would be nice." They set off down the street together, their pace naturally matching. The evening was crisp but not cold, and the city around them was settling into its nighttime rhythm. "How was your day?" Amara asked as they turned onto a quieter side street. "Good. Busy. I had 3 tow calls and a full day of building maintenance, but good busy if you know what I mean." "I do. There's a difference between being overwhelmed and being productively busy." "Exactly." He glanced at her. "What about you? More client tours?" "No, just follow-up calls and paperwork. The exciting part of the job," she smiled. "Actually, that's not fair. I do like the detail work, making sure everything's organized and running smoothly." "You're good at it. I could tell from watching you coordinate everything this week." "Thank you. You know, I've been thinking about what you said, about doing things that make me proud of myself." "Yeah?" I realized that this week was the first time in a long time that I felt truly proud of my work. Not because my father was proud of me, but because I was proud of what I'd accomplished. That's important. You should feel good about what you do. What about you? Are you proud of the choices you've made? Colt was quiet for a moment. That's a complicated question. How so? I'm proud of taking care of my family. I'm proud of the work I do, but sometimes I wonder if people see me as someone who couldn't do better instead of someone who chose what was right. Amara felt her cheeks burn with shame. "I think I was one of those people." "I know you were." His voice was gentle, not accusatory. "I heard what you said to your friend that first night, and again in the lobby with your ex-boyfriend." "Colt, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about you. Completely wrong." "It's okay. People make assumptions. I'm used to it." "It's not okay, and I don't want to be the kind of person who judges someone by their job instead of their character." They stopped walking and turned to face each other under a streetlight. The warm glow made everything feel softer, more intimate. "Can I tell you something?" Amara said. "Of course." "I was scared. When you helped me that first night, when you refused my tip and were so professional and kind, it scared me." "Why?" "Because I'm supposed to have everything figured out. I'm supposed to be this successful, put-together person who knows exactly what she wants and how to get it. But you made me feel things I didn't expect to feel, and I didn't know how to handle that." Colt stepped closer. "What kind of things?" "Safe. Understood. Like, maybe I didn't have to prove myself to everyone all the time." "You don't have to prove anything to me, Amara. You never did." "I know that now, and I'm sorry it took me so long to figure it out." "It's okay. We all have things we need to work through." "What do you need to work through?" "Believing that I'm worth someone's time and attention for who I am, not just what I can do for them." The honesty in his voice made Amara's chest ache. "You are worth it, Colt. You're worth so much more than you know." "So are you." They were standing close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Amara? Yes? Can I kiss you?" "I was hoping you would." He cupped her face gently in his hands, and when their lips met, it was soft and sweet and exactly right. No fireworks or dramatic music, just the simple rightness of two people who had found their way to each other despite their fears and assumptions. When they broke apart, they stayed close, foreheads touching, sharing the same breath. "Wow," Amara whispered. "Yeah," Colt agreed. "Wow." "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we take it slow. We're honest with each other, and we see where this goes." "I'd like that." "Me too." They walked back toward Hill Tower together, hands linked, both of them feeling like the world had shifted into sharper focus. Neither of them noticed Mark Lang watching from his car across the street, his expression dark and calculating. Thursday. Morning brought storm clouds and the kind of humidity that made everything feel heavy. Amara was running late after hitting the snooze button one too many times, still floating from her evening with Colt. She rushed through her morning routine and grabbed her coffee and tote bag, making it to the elevator just as the doors were closing. She squeezed in next to Mrs. Chen from the 8th floor and smiled politely. "Good morning, Amara," Mrs. Chen said, but there was something strange in her voice, a note of curiosity that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen. How are you today?" "Oh, I'm fine. Just wondering about that video that's going around." Amara felt her stomach drop. "What video?" "Someone posted a little clip on the building's social media page. You and that handsome maintenance man. Very sweet, actually." The elevator reached the lobby, and Amara practically stumbled out, her mind racing. What video? When had someone filmed her and Colt? She pulled out her phone and found the Hill Tower residence Facebook page. There, posted just an hour ago, was a short video clip. Her heart sank as she watched it. It was from yesterday afternoon, after the celebration in the lobby cafe. Someone had filmed her and Colt walking toward the building exit, with him carrying her tote bag and both of them laughing at something he'd said. The caption read, "Romance blooms at Hill Tower. Looks like our newest maintenance guy has caught the eye of a certain heiress. Love is in the air. Hill Tower." Amara stared at the video in horror. It was innocent enough, just two people walking and talking, but the caption made it seem calculated, like Colt was some kind of gold digger who had targeted her for her money. Already there were comments. Most of them were harmless, residents wishing her well or making jokes about workplace romance. But a few made her cringe. Smart guy going after the CEO's daughter. Wonder how long it took him to figure out who she was. Easy money if he plays his cards right. Amara felt sick. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. People would assume the worst about Colt's motives, and they'd assume she was naive and easily manipulated. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Need to see you in my office. Now." 10 minutes later, she was sitting across from Victor Hill in his corner office, the city spread out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I assume you've seen the video," he said without preamble. "I have. And? And what, Dad?" "It's just a video of two people walking." Victor leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "Amara, I need you to be very careful about the optics here." "The optics?" "Hill Industries is a family business, but we're also a public company. Our reputation matters. Your reputation matters." "I understand that, but I haven't done anything wrong." "I'm not saying you have, but perception matters as much as reality in business. If our clients and investors start to think that our judgment is compromised by personal relationships with employees. Colt isn't just an employee, Dad. He's a good man who's worked hard to help us this week." "I'm sure he is, but that doesn't change the fact that this video makes it look like he's pursuing you for financial gain." The words hit Amara like a slap. "You think he's using me? I think you're young and successful and wealthy, and that makes you a target for people with bad intentions." "Colt isn't like that." "How well do you really know him, Amara?" She wanted to argue, to tell her father about Colt's sacrifices for his family, about the way he'd turned down her tips and refused to accept rewards. But looking at the concern in Victor's eyes, she found herself doubting her own judgment. "I just need you to be careful," Victor said more gently. "Take some distance, let things cool down. If this man's intentions are genuine, a little space won't change that. And if I refuse, then you'll put us both in a very difficult position." Amara left her father's office feeling sick and confused. Part of her was angry at his ultimatum, but another part was terrified that maybe he was right. Maybe she was being naive. Maybe she'd misjudged Colt just as badly as she'd misjudged him before, only in the opposite direction. At noon, she found Colt in the building's service stairwell, checking pipes on the 3rd floor. The moment he saw her face, his expression shifted to concern. "Hey, what's wrong? Have you seen the video?" "What video?" She showed him the Facebook post on her phone. As he watched it, she saw his jaw tighten and something dark flicker across his face. "I see," he said quietly. "The comments. People are saying you're just after my money." "And what do you think?" "I don't know what to think. My father's worried about the optics, about how this looks for the company." Colt handed her back her phone. So what are you saying? I think we need to take a step back, just for a little while, until this dies down. I see. It's not that I don't care about you, it's just complicated. Colt was quiet for a long moment, and when he looked at her, his expression was carefully neutral. If you need space, say you need space. Don't call it protection. What? Don't pretend you're doing this for my sake. If you're embarrassed by me, or if you're worried about what people will think, just say so. That's not... It's okay, Amara, I understand. Last night it was really nice, but I get it. Your world and my world don't really mix. Colt, please, I should get back to work. He turned and walked away, leaving Amara alone in the stairwell with the sound of her own rapid heartbeat and the growing certainty that she'd just made a terrible mistake. Thursday evening brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched Amara's mood perfectly. She'd spent the day replaying her conversation with Colt in the stairwell, each memory making her feel worse about how she'd handled things. At 6 o'clock, she was sitting in her condo staring at her phone and trying to work up the courage to text him an apology when her doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found Ellie Jensen standing in the hallway looking young and nervous. Ellie, what are you doing here? I need to tell you something about my brother. Ellie's voice was quiet but determined. Can I come in? Of course. Amara stepped aside to let her pass. Is everything okay? Someone approached Colt today. A man named Trent. He offered Colt money to transfer to a different building. A lot of money. Amara felt her stomach drop. What kind of money? Enough to pay for the rest of my college and help Colt get back into the union program he gave up. All he had to do was quietly transfer his contracts and stay away from you. And what did he say? He told the guy to go to hell. Ellie's voice was fierce with pride. He said he wasn't for sale, and he didn't want money that came from hurting someone he cared about. Amara sank down onto her couch, the weight of understanding hitting her hard. Mark, this has Mark written all over it. The guy who was your boyfriend? Ex-boyfriend. And yes, this is exactly the kind of thing he would do. Amara felt anger and guilt warring in her chest. Why are you telling me this? Because Colt won't. He's protecting you, even though you hurt him today, even though he thinks you're embarrassed by him. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. I'm not embarrassed by him. Then why did you ask him to stay away? Because I was scared. Because my father was worried about how things looked, and I let his fears become my fears. Ellie studied Amara's face. Do you care about him? Yes, more than I realized until today. Then you should know that Colt has been taking care of other people his whole life. He gave up his career for our mom. He's giving up his social life for me. But for the first time in years, I've seen him happy. Really happy. Ellie? He deserves someone who's proud to be with him, not someone who sees him as a problem to be managed. The young woman stood up to leave, then paused at the door. I hope you figure out what you really want, Ms. Hill, because my brother is worth fighting for. After Ellie left, Amara sat alone in her condo as the rain pattered against her windows. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Colt's number. But what could she say? That she was sorry for doubting him? That she'd let fear and social pressure override her own feelings? That she'd been a coward when he'd needed her to be brave? At 9:30, there was another knock at her door. This time it was Colt, and he looked tired and serious. We need to talk, he said. Yes, we do. Ellie told me about the money offer. Colt closed his eyes briefly. I told her not to get involved. I'm glad she did. Colt, I'm so sorry. Amara, I need to end this. The words hit her like ice water. What? This thing between us. I need to end it before it gets any more complicated. But why? We can work through this, can we? Because from where I'm standing, every time there's pressure, you choose your image over me, and I can't live my life waiting for the next time you decide I'm not worth the trouble. That's not fair. I was trying to protect both of us. Don't. His voice was firm but not angry. Don't decide for me what I need protection from. Don't make choices about my life because you think you know better than I do. Amara felt tears building behind her eyes. Colt, please, I know I messed up, but I care about you, Amara, more than I should, but I can't be with someone who's ashamed of me. I'm not ashamed of you. Then why won't you fight for us? The question hung in the air between them. Amara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because he was right. When the pressure had come, she'd chosen the easy path. She'd chosen fear over love. I thought so, Colt said quietly. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, last night was one of the best nights of my life. I hope you find someone who makes you feel like you're worth fighting for. The door closed softly behind him, and Amara was left alone with the sound of rain and the devastating realization that she'd just lost the best thing that had ever happened to her. Friday morning found Amara staring at herself in her bathroom mirror, her eyes puffy and red from a sleepless night of crying. She looked like she felt, lost, broken, and deeply ashamed of her own cowardice. Her phone buzzed with a call from Nadia. "Girl, you sound terrible," Nadia said without preamble. "What happened?" "I ruined everything." Amara's voice was hoarse from crying. "With the repair guy? I thought things were going well." They were. But then there was a video and comments, and my father was worried about optics, and I panicked. "Okay, slow down. Tell me what happened." For the next 20 minutes, Amara poured out the whole story. The video, her father's concerns, her conversation with Colt, Ellie's visit, and finally the devastating end of whatever they'd been building together. "So let me get this straight," Nadia said when she finished. "This man turned down money to stay away from you, protected you from scandal even when you hurt him, and you still let him walk away?" "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple. Amara, honey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Who are you when no one's watching? When there's no one to impress, no image to maintain, no expectations to meet? Who is Amara Hill?" The question hit Amara like a punch to the chest. "I don't know." "Then you better figure it out, because you just lost a good man because you were too scared to be yourself." "Nadia, no, I'm not done. You've spent your whole adult life trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect executive, the perfect Hill Industries princess. But what do you want? Not what your father wants, not what looks good on paper. What do you want?" Amara stared at herself in the mirror, seeing her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. But underneath all that, she saw something else. Fear. Bone-deep terror of disappointing people, of not being enough, of choosing wrong. "I want to be proud of myself," she whispered. "I want to be with someone who makes me feel brave instead of scared. I want to stop running away from anything that doesn't fit perfectly into my planned-out life." "And what do you want to do about Colt?" "I want to fight for him, but I don't know if it's too late." "Only one way to find out. But Amara, this time you better be all in. Don't you dare go to that man with half measures and excuses. If you're going to do this, you better be ready to choose him over everyone else's opinions." After hanging up, Amara got dressed quickly and drove to the garage where Colt worked. Her heart was pounding as she parked across from Martinez Auto Repair, rehearsing what she wanted to say. Through the bay window, she could see him sliding out from under a car, his face focused and serious. Even from a distance, she could tell he was tired. Her heart clenched with the knowledge that she'd put some of that weariness there. Amara sat in her car for 10 minutes, watching Colt work and trying to summon her courage. Finally, she couldn't wait any longer. She crossed the street and walked into the garage, the smell of motor oil and coffee wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. "Excuse me," she called out. Colt looked up from the engine he was working on, and for a moment his face showed everything: surprise, hurt, hope, wariness. "Amara, what are you doing here?" "I came to apologize, and to tell you the truth." He wiped his hands on a rag, not moving away from the car. "Which truth is that?" "That I was cruel to you because I was scared. That I let other people's fears become my fears. That I used protecting you as an excuse to protect myself." Colt was quiet for a long moment. "Okay. I appreciate the apology. That's not all." Amara took a deep breath. "I'm not here to ask you to fix this. I'm not here to ask you to take me back. I'm here to tell you that you were right about everything." "About what?" "About me choosing my image over you. About me not fighting for us. About me making decisions for you instead of with you." Her voice cracked slightly. "You deserved so much better than what I gave you." "Amara, please let me finish." She stepped closer to him. "I spent my whole life trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect executive, the perfect representation of everything my family has built. But being with you made me realize that I've never tried to be perfectly myself." "And who is that?" Someone who's proud to know you. Someone who thinks you're one of the best men I've ever met. Someone who wants to be brave enough to love you even if other people don't understand it. Colt set down his tools and really looked at her. Love? I love that you turned down money to protect me, even when I'd hurt you. I love that you take care of your sister without complaining. I love that you fix things so they stop hurting people later. Tears were streaming down her face now. I love you, Colt, and I'm sorry it took me losing you to figure out how to say it. He was quiet for a long time, just looking at her with those serious green eyes. What about your father? What about the optics? I'm going to tell my father that I'm a grown woman who can make her own choices about who to love, and if the optics are a problem, then we'll figure out how to manage them together. Together? If you'll let me, if it's not too late. Colt stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. I was scared too, you know. Of what? Of being a project. Of being someone you thought you could save or fix. Of never being enough for your world. You're not a project, Colt. You're the man I love, and my world is better with you in it. So what are you proposing? Honesty first, no hiding from each other or from anyone else. We take it slow, but we take it together, and we tell the people who matter most to us. Starting with your father? Starting with your sister, I owe Ellie an apology too. Colt smiled then, the first real smile she'd seen from him in days. She's going to like that. And then my father. I want him to really know you, not just see you as the building maintenance guy. Are you sure about this, Amara? Because once we do this, there's no going back to keeping things simple and professional. I'm sure. Are you? I've been sure since that first night when you tried to tip me, and I didn't want your money. I wanted your respect. You have it. You have all of it. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I love you too, by the way, even when you're being stubborn and scared. Especially then? Especially then. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting over at the same time. Friday evening found Amara in her father's kitchen, trying to remember the last time she'd actually cooked a meal instead of ordering takeout. Nadia was there helping, dicing vegetables and offering commentary on Amara's knife skills. Girl, you're going to cut your finger off if you don't slow down, Nadia said, watching Amara attack a bell pepper with nervous energy. I'm fine. I just want this to be perfect. It's pasta and salad, not a state dinner. Relax. It's the first time my father is meeting Colt as my boyfriend, instead of just the building maintenance guy. It needs to be perfect. Nadia set down her knife and looked at her friend seriously. Amara, honey, your father's going to judge Colt based on how he treats you and how you light up around him, not based on whether you remember to use the good china. I know, I want Dad to see what I see in him. And what's that? Someone who makes me better, someone who challenges me to be honest with myself, someone who loves me for who I am, not what I represent. At 6 o'clock, Victor Hill arrived at his penthouse, surprised to find his daughter bustling around the kitchen with flour on her apron and a determined expression on her face. Amara? What's all this? I'm making dinner. We're having guests. Guests? Dad, I need to tell you something about Colt Jensen. Victor's expression grew cautious. I thought we agreed you were going to keep some distance there. We did, and I tried. But Dad, I need you to understand something. Someone offered Colt money to transfer to a different building and stay away from me. What? How much money? Enough to pay for his sister's college and get him back into a union program. And he turned it down. Victor was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Who made the offer? Someone connected to Mark. I think Mark is trying to cause problems for both Colt and me. And you're sure about Colt's response? His sister told me. She was proud of him for refusing, and she was angry at me for not standing by him when he needed me to. Victor walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. That changes things. Dad, I need you to meet Colt as the man I care about, not as an employee or a potential problem. Can you do that? How serious are we talking about here, Amara? Serious enough that I'm willing to risk everything for him. Serious enough that I told him I love him. Victor turned to look at his daughter, really look at her. And how did he respond? He said he loves me too. even when I'm being stubborn and scared. Well, Victor said with a small smile, that suggests he really knows you. At 6:50, the doorbell rang. Amara took a deep breath and went to answer it, finding Colt and Ellie standing in the hallway. Colt was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt, and Ellie had on a simple dress with her hair pulled back. "Hi," Amara said, suddenly nervous again. "Hi," Colt replied. He was carrying a small bakery box. "We brought dessert. Ellie insisted on the good stuff." "Tiramisu," Ellie said with a shy smile. "I figured if we're doing this, we might as well do it right." "Thank you. And Ellie, I owe you an apology." "You don't—" "I do. You were right about everything you said. Your brother deserves someone who's proud to be with him, and I should have been that person from the beginning." Ellie studied Amara's face. "And now?" "Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure he knows how much he means to me." "Good answer," Ellie said with a grin. As they walked into the penthouse, Amara felt Colt take her hand. The simple gesture gave her courage. Just as they were settling into the living room for introductions, there was a loud hissing sound from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of rushing water. "What was that?" Victor asked, standing up quickly. Colt was already moving toward the door. "Sounds like a water line burst, probably in the corridor." They all rushed into the hallway, where water was indeed spraying from a fitting in the wall. It wasn't a catastrophic break, but it was enough to create a mess and potentially damage the artwork and furniture in the corridor. "Oh no," Amara gasped. "Dad, your photographs!" Victor's collection of framed family photos and business memorabilia lined the hallway walls. Water was already starting to pool on the hardwood floor. "Ellie, can you grab some towels from the linen closet?" Colt said calmly, already pulling out his phone. "Amara, I need you to help me move these frames away from the wall." While he dialed Deshawn's number, Amara and her father quickly moved the most valuable items to safety. Colt spoke quickly into his phone, giving precise details about the location and type of break. "Deshawn's on his way with the building emergency kit," he said, hanging up. "But I can isolate the water flow now if I can find the shutoff valve." He moved along the hallway wall, running his hands over the panels until he found what he was looking for. With a quick twist, the spraying water slowed to a trickle, then stopped completely. "How did you know where that was?" Victor asked, clearly impressed. "Building layout. Every unit has the same basic configuration. The shutoffs are usually in the same relative position." Ellie returned with an armload of towels, and they all worked together to soak up the water and protect Victor's memorabilia. Within 15 minutes, they had the situation completely under control. "Well," Victor said, looking around at the managed chaos, "that's not exactly how I planned to start dinner." "But look," Amara said, gesturing around the hallway. "No damage to anything that matters. Your photos are safe, the floors are fine, and we all got to work together." "Thanks to Colt's quick thinking," Victor said, extending his hand to the younger man. "That could have been a real disaster." "Just part of knowing buildings," Colt said modestly, shaking his hand. "Age-stressed fittings can go at any time. It's usually not dramatic, just inconvenient. Still, I appreciate your expertise and your quick action." As they settled back into the living room, slightly damp but laughing, Amara caught her father studying Colt with new interest. There was something about seeing someone handle a crisis with competence and grace that revealed character in ways conversation never could. By 7:30, they were all seated around Victor's dining table, sharing a meal that was simple but satisfying: pasta with homemade sauce, fresh salad, and good bread. The earlier crisis had broken the ice, in a way that formal introductions never could have. "So, Colt," Victor said, passing the salad, "tell me about your work schedule. Amara mentioned you do building maintenance and towing." "I work for Martinez Auto 3 days a week doing towing and mechanical work. The other days I do building maintenance contracts around the city. It gives me flexibility." "Flexibility for what?" "Taking care of Ellie, making sure she can focus on school without worrying about work or bills." Victor looked at Ellie. "What are you studying?" "Business administration with a focus on nonprofit management," Ellie said. "I want to work for organizations that help families dealing with medical crises." "That's admirable. Personal experience inspiring professional goals." "Our mother had a stroke when I was in high school," Ellie said simply. "The medical bills were overwhelming, but it was the lack of support systems that really hurt. Families shouldn't have to choose between medical care and financial survival." I'm sorry for your loss, Victor said gently. Thank you. But we were lucky. Colt made sure we never lost hope. How so? Ellie looked at her brother, who was clearly uncomfortable with the attention. He gave up a union apprenticeship to take care of Mom and me. It would have led to a supervisory position with the city, but the hours weren't flexible enough. Victor set down his fork. You turned down a career advancement to care for your family? It wasn't really a choice, Colt said. Family comes first. It was absolutely a choice, Ellie insisted. He could have taken the position and found other solutions, but he chose to put our needs before his own advancement. Do you regret it? Victor asked directly. Colt thought for a moment. No, I regret that the circumstances made it necessary, but not the choice itself. I like the work I do now. I like helping people solve problems. And after Ellie graduates? We'll see. Maybe I'll look into those union programs again. Maybe I'll start my own maintenance company. Maybe I'll find something completely different that I love. That's a healthy attitude. Too many people get locked into one path and forget that life is full of possibilities. For the next hour, the conversation flowed easily. Victor asked about Colt's military service, his time working for the city, and his thoughts on building infrastructure. Colt answered everything honestly and thoughtfully, never trying to impress but clearly engaged with the topics. You know, Victor said as they finished the main course, I have to say I'm impressed by your approach to crisis management, not just tonight with the water line, but the way you handled the building repairs during our client tours. Thank you, sir. I believe in preventing problems rather than just fixing them after they happen. That's good business philosophy, too. As they cleared the dinner dishes and prepared for dessert, Victor excused himself for a moment. He returned, carrying the vintage Rolex watch that Colt had found in Amara's vent. I wanted to thank you properly for finding this, he said, offering the watch to Colt. You don't need to thank me, sir. I was just doing my job. No, you went beyond your job. This watch belonged to my father. It's one of the few things I have left of him. Victor's voice was quiet with emotion. Returning it meant more to me than you know. I'm glad it made it back to you, Colt said simply. Family heirlooms should stay in the family. Victor nodded, studying the younger man's face. Yes, they should. As they were finishing Ellie's tiramisu and talking about weekend plans, the building's concierge called up to Victor's apartment. Mr. Hill? Mark Lang is here asking to see you and Ms. Amara. He says it's urgent. Victor looked at Amara, who felt her stomach tighten. Send him up. Dad, you don't have to. Actually, I think I do. If Mark is behind the offer that was made to Colt, then it's time we addressed that directly. 5 minutes later, Mark Lang walked into the penthouse looking confident and polished in an expensive suit. His expression shifted when he saw Colt and Ellie at the dinner table. Victor, Amara, I didn't realize you were entertaining. Mark, Victor said coolly, what can we do for you? I wanted to discuss some concerns I have about building security and staffing issues. What kind of staffing issues? Mark's eyes flicked to Colt. Situations where employees might be taking advantage of their access to residents, particularly vulnerable residents. Mark, Amara said sharply, what are you doing? I'm looking out for your best interests and your father's reputation. Victor stood up. Mark, let me ask you something. Do you know a man named Trent? Mark's confident expression flickered. I might. Why? Because someone named Trent approached Mr. Jensen here with a financial offer to transfer to a different building and stay away from my daughter. I don't know anything about that. Really? Because the amount was quite specific. Enough to pay for a college education and a union apprenticeship program. Those are expensive line items. Someone would have had to do research to know exactly what would be tempting. Mark's face was getting red. Victor, if someone made an inappropriate offer, that just proves my point about... It proves my point, Victor said firmly, about people who interfere in my family's personal business. I'm trying to protect Amara. No, you're trying to control a situation that's none of your business. Victor's voice was getting harder. Mark, I'm going to be very clear. My daughter is an adult who can make her own choices about who to spend time with, and Mr. Jensen has proven himself to be exactly the kind of man I'd want her to know. Honest, hard-working, and principled enough to refuse money when it comes with strings attached. But Victor, this conversation is over. Mark, and so is whatever campaign you've been running to interfere in Amara's life. Stay away from my family." Mark looked around the room, taking in the cozy dinner scene, the obvious comfort between the couples, and the united front that Victor and Amara presented. His face showed the moment he realized he'd lost completely. "Fine," he said stiffly, "but don't come crying to me when this whole thing falls apart." "We won't," Amara said firmly. After Mark left, the apartment felt lighter, like a dark cloud had been lifted. "Well," Victor said, sitting back down at the table, "that was unpleasant but necessary." "Dad, I'm sorry about all of this drama." "Don't apologize, Amara. Mark created this situation, not you." He looked at Colt. "And I'm impressed that you handled his interference with such dignity." "I didn't want to cause problems for Amara or your family," Colt said. "The only problem was Mark's meddling. As far as I'm concerned, that's behind us now." Saturday morning brought sunshine and the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel possible. Amara woke up in her own bed for the first time in days, without the weight of fear and uncertainty pressing on her chest. At 10 o'clock, she met Colt and Ellie at the neighborhood farmers market, a weekly tradition she'd never participated in, but had always wanted to try. The market was bustling with families, couples, and people walking dogs, all enjoying the beautiful day and fresh produce. "This is amazing," Amara said, stopping at a stand selling varieties of tomatoes she'd never heard of. "How do you choose?" "Trial and error," Ellie said, picking up a purple heirloom variety, "and asking questions. The farmers love to talk about their produce." For the next hour, they wandered through the market together, sampling cheeses, buying fresh bread, and debating the merits of different apple varieties. It was the kind of everyday intimacy that Amara had always imagined but never experienced, choosing vegetables together, bumping shoulders as they walked, planning meals as a team. "What's that smile about?" Colt asked as they waited in line at the honey stand. "I'm just happy. This feels so normal and perfect at the same time." "It is normal. That's what makes it perfect." At the flower stand, an older woman recognized Amara from a Hill Industries photo that had been in the business journal. "You're Victor Hill's daughter, aren't you?" she asked kindly. "I am," Amara said, tensing slightly. "I thought so. You have his eyes, and this must be your young man." She smiled at Colt. Amara felt Colt's hand squeeze hers gently. "Yes, this is Colt, and his sister Ellie." "How lovely. You make a beautiful family. These sunflowers would be perfect for your kitchen." As they walked away with an armload of bright yellow flowers, Amara realized how easy that had been. No drama, no explanations, just a simple introduction and acceptance. "See," Colt said, reading her thoughts. "Most people don't care about the things we worry about. They just want to see if you're happy." "Are you?" "Happy, I mean. Happier than I've been in years." Back at Colt's apartment, they cooked lunch together using their farmers market finds. The apartment was small but clean and comfortable, with mismatched furniture that somehow all worked together perfectly. "I love this place," Amara said, looking around the kitchen as she stirred a sauce made from the fresh tomatoes. "It feels like a real home." "What does your place feel like?" Ellie asked from where she was chopping herbs. "Like a magazine spread. Beautiful but not really lived in." "You could change that," Colt suggested. "Add some things that make it feel like you." "Like what?" "Books you actually read. Art you chose because you love it, not because it matches the couch. Photos of people and moments that matter to you." "I'd like that. Maybe you could help me?" "I'd love to." After lunch, Ellie left for a study group, leaving Amara and Colt alone to wash dishes and talk about the week ahead. There was something so comfortable about standing side by side at the sink, sharing the routine domestic task. "Colt?" "Yeah? I want to be seen with you. I want people to know we're together. No more hiding, no more worrying about optics." "Are you sure? Because once we do that, there's no going back to keeping things private." "I'm sure. I want to build something real with you, and real relationships aren't hidden away." He turned to face her, soap bubbles still on his hands. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we go to next week's Hill Industries board meeting together. I want the whole business world to see that I'm proud to be with you." "That sounds terrifying." "It does, but the good kind of terrifying. The kind that means we're doing something brave and important." "In that case," Colt said, pulling her close, "I'm in." 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Amara pulled into the parking lot of Martinez Auto Repair. Through the bay windows she could see Colt finishing up a brake job, his movements efficient and sure. The past 3 months had been a revelation. There had been challenges, of course. Some of her father's business associates had been surprised by her choice in partners. A few clients had made comments. But for every person who questioned her judgment, there had been 2 others who respected her courage and Colt's character. More importantly, she discovered who she was when she stopped trying to be perfect for everyone else. She'd started taking on more design projects at Hill Industries, projects that combined her business skills with her creative passion. She'd learned to cook, really cook, with ingredients from the farmer's market. She'd made her condo into a home that reflected her personality instead of a magazine spread, and she'd learned what it felt like to be loved for exactly who she was. "Hey, beautiful," Colt called out as she walked into the garage. "You're early. I brought Chinese food. The good stuff, not the cheap place." He grinned, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "You've been talking to Ellie. She mentioned that you haven't been eating enough. Finals week stress. She's going to ace every exam. I'm not worried about her anymore. Because you gave her the foundation to succeed. You should be proud of that." "I am, and I'm proud of you too. That design proposal you submitted for the new Hill Industries headquarters is incredible." Amara felt the familiar warm glow that came from his praise, not because she needed his approval, but because he truly understood what the work meant to her. "Speaking of pride," she said, "I have something to tell you." "Good something or bad something?" "Good something. My father wants to offer you a position with Hill Industries, not maintenance, though he'd be happy to have you do that too, but as a project coordinator, someone who can bridge the gap between the design team and the construction crew." Colt set down his tools and really looked at her. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. He's been watching how you handle problems, how you think about prevention instead of just reaction. He thinks you'd be perfect for it." "What do you think?" "I think you'd be amazing at it. But more importantly, I think you'd love it. It would use all your skills and give you room to grow." "And you and me? Working for the same company?" "We've been working together since the day we met. This would just make it official." Colt was quiet for a moment, processing the offer. Then he smiled, the smile that had been making her heart race for months. "There's something I need to tell you too." "Oh?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring, not a diamond, but a deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny white stones that caught the garage's fluorescent light and threw it back like stars. "Colt," Amara breathed, "I know it's not fancy. I know it's not what people would expect for Victor Hill's daughter, but it's honest, and it's real, and it's how I feel about you. It's perfect." Tears were streaming down her face. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Amara Hill, you've made me believe that I deserve to be loved for who I am. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her under the harsh garage lights that somehow felt like the most romantic setting in the world. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. Equal every day." "Equal every day," she repeated. As Louise turned off the bay lights and they stepped out into the evening air, Amara looked down at her ring and smiled. She thought love was about finding someone who could stand beside her in her world, but what she'd found was something better, someone who had helped her build a new world entirely, one where love was earned through daily kindness, where character mattered more than status, and where 2 imperfect people could choose each other again and again. "So what do we do now?" she asked as they walked toward her car, hands linked. "Now we go home and call Ellie and your father and tell them the good news. Then we eat Chinese food and plan our future." "That sounds perfect." "It does, doesn't it?" And as they drove through the city lights toward home, Amara realized that she'd finally learned the most important lesson of all, that love wasn't about finding someone who could fit into your life, but about finding someone worth building a whole new life with, someone who made you brave enough to be exactly who you were meant to be. Someone like Colt Jensen,